All this talk of paying more and more is getting me down, my love. Like a cat in a bag, waiting to drown. This time we're not lying down. And I hope you're thinking of me as you're taking another bride. Now your lies don't work, they just make us hurt, and we're not falling for that again. And I know that we're no longer weak, 'cause we're taking it to the streets, and we're ready to show we refuse to go, and we'll fight you until the end. 'Cause can me, if violin falls, you're falling too. And this I swear, you're selling my life, I'm better off dead. All this talk of bail and bondholders, it's getting me down, my love. Like a rat in a trap, waiting to drown. This time we're not backing down. Now your lies don't work, they just make us hurt, and we're not falling for it again. No, we're not taking a hit 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 again. Never backing down, never giving up. No more, no more, no more, no more, no more. Never backing down, never giving up. No more, no more, no more, no more, no more. No more, no more, no more, no more, no more. No more, no more, no more, no more, no more. No more, no more, no more, no more, no more. No more, no more, no more, no more, no more.
Good evening and welcome to the Velocity of Now with me, your host, Thomas Sheridan. It's the 8th, and it's now the 8th, there's a 7th in some parts of the world, of January 2015, and what you heard then, just after the intro, was a band called The Distance, well, a musical project, and that was, which I'm proud to be part of. We got together in early December, I think it was the second week of December in Dublin, and with no prior rehearsal, and I think we did it on a third take with a live recording. There was no over-tracking or multi-tracking or anything, which was terrifying for me because that's usually how I've always recorded. But we managed to bang that song out. It was Paul Madden's idea initially, and the idea was to create a kind of a modern protest song about what's happening in Ireland tonight, today, last week, last year, 4 years ago, and what's happening in the future. And the song was a kind of a remake of it was a remake of the Drugs Don't Work by The Verve, which is a song we all love. And Paul came up with the idea of changing the lyrics to The Lies Don't Work. And he came up with most of the lyrics, and that was Sandra McShane you heard on the vocals. She helped with some of the lyrics as well. The band, The Distance, was Sandra McShane on the vocals and the acoustic guitar, me, Thomas Sheridan, on the lead guitar, Pat Murphy on the bass, and Paul Madden on the drums. And it was basically a modern Irish rebel song is what we were looking for. There's a video online for it. I'll post the link in the show page to go with it, of various protests around Ireland. And that's basically what the first hour of the show will be about. I just wanted to play the song at the beginning so everyone hears it. And you know that there's lots of ways you can fight oppression. There's lots of ways you can fight injustice. And there's lots of ways you can fight BS. You can do it creatively if you really want to. And I feel, and I've always felt, the purpose of artists, I mean switched on artists, whether they be musicians, singer-songwriters, poets, painters, anything, comedians, is to build a firewall around the population to prevent the propaganda from the psychopaths in charge from penetrating into the people. Our job is to act as a firewall, and that's always our job. And what happened in Paris today couldn't bring that more terrifyingly and darker into focus. There's no getting around that today is a very, very dark day. And I want to talk about later on the show what happened in Paris with the horrific events there. But we'll do that afterwards. I want to talk about a few things specifically pertaining to Ireland here at the start. Again, this is The Velocity of Now, me, your host, Thomas Sheridan. My website is www.thomassheridanarts.com. The podcast and the video podcast are broadcast for this show episode will be up in a couple of days, and previous episodes are on www.newsymbolsmedia.tv. There'll be links to various topics on the show, including the video for the song By the Distance that you just heard. If you want to go to my website, there's a huge amount of articles and information there. My YouTube channel is Thomas Sheridan Arts. It's heading towards 1.5 million views and about 8,000 subscribers now. So thank you for everyone who supported me over the years, even though I haven't always lived up to your expectations of what you wanted me to say. But I can't help that because I don't play conspiracy circle jerk. I don't join the team. I look at everything individually like an old-fashioned investigative journalist to the best of my ability with the evidence that I have. And I then make a decision after I've seen everything. I don't jump in right away. And I think that's a wise way to be, because we've all been caught with our knickers down, because there's all kinds of agendas in this world that make you pick sides. They want you to pick sides. But in some cases, both sides are wrong. We'll talk again a bit more about that later. If you go to the website, if you want to support me, you can buy a book there, something. You can go to the tab that says books. I'd be very grateful if you could do that. And thanks, and even just sharing my articles on my website if you're broke, that actually helps as well. So it gets the word out there, gets the news out there. Now, the title of the song we played was The Lies Don't Work, and they're not working. Much to my amazement, Ireland has woken up. I really did not expect this. I really did not expect this in a country where you can walk into a pub anywhere in the country when there's a soccer match playing on the TV, particularly if it's Man United versus Liverpool, and Irish people are going us, we, us, them, and getting all emotionally attached to 22 millionaires. Foreign millionaires in two British corporations overseas, with tears rolling down their eyes, to the point where you have guys in Cork wearing Liverpool jerseys calling fellas in Cork with Man United jerseys mank scum, and then in Dublin they're calling the ones in the Man United jerseys and the Liverpool jerseys scouse scum, and yet most of them they're all Irish, every last one of them. This is the power of media and the power of brainwashing, and I thought that the Irish were a finished race, having experienced things like that. The Irish were a very childlike and simple and easily led people, I believed. And I say this as an Irish person myself. I mean, I just felt that we were like that. But there's two sides to us, and I think for the first time since I've been a child, I'm seeing the other side. The other side is a fire that burns below the surface, that's within many Irish people that they don't like to bring to the surface, that they'll suppress it and they'll keep it. It's like a dark family secret that inside us is a kind of insurgent, is a kind of a rebel. But we don't like to bring it to the surface. It's probably a cultural thing in many cases. A good metaphor for that was, I was in Wicklow. Wicklow is the county next to Dublin. It's quite remote, actually, which is an interesting thing. I always find that, like, next to large cities all over the world, especially at their capital cities, there's always an area of wilderness beside it, right beside it. And so I was up there a few years ago. Well, it wasn't a few years ago. I think it was late. Yeah, it was early last year with Aidan Killian, the comedian. We were making a movie, and unfortunately I think they ran out of funds to complete the film, but we got some great footage. Hopefully it'll see the light one day. And we were coming back, I think, over the mountains, and someone just pointed out the gorse. I can't remember who it was. All the gorse. Now, gorse is called furze in Ireland. It's a particularly kind of brittle shrub. It's got spikes on it, but it has this. It's got this kind of dualist aspect to it. It's brittle and covered in spikes, but when the flowers, the pretty yellow flowers appear on it, it smells like coconuts. So you're walking through the Irish countryside in early summer and you smell coconuts everywhere. That's the gorse flowers. Now what's interesting about the gorse is the wood is highly combustible. I'm not sure why. I think someone told me there was some kind of resin or something inside it that burns very quickly. Now the gorse tree amazingly can have fires underneath the ground that burn for years and years and years. The fires burn very slow. And I'm back. This time I'm lucky I have Paul, the greatest second producer in the world, who's calling me all the way from Florida, but I'm back on the air, on the phone, and I can hope you can hear me. They shut off the internet. I've no doubt about it. The internet has been on for days on end. The red light never came on the modem, and as soon as I start talking tonight about anything, as soon as I start getting to the conversation, the modem goes off. I can't get online. The timing is too perfect, and I've no doubt it's an attack. And why it's an attack is because I'm a genuine observer. If I was to talk about aliens, shape-shifting crocodiles in the House of Lords, reptilians, I'd be left alone because I wouldn't be a danger to them. If I was to talk about spacemen controlling everything, I wouldn't be a danger to them. If I was to talk about UFO woo being a danger to the system, I would be left alone. No, but because I have an independent opinion and I don't play conspiracy circle jerk and join the team in the hope of one day I get on Alex Jones' show where I'll be a big star in the conspiracy scene, I'm a threat. Simple as that. Now, I hope you can hear the program okay. I was already fired up before I came on, and there's no way these bastards are going to take us down because this... You want to know who the real people are in this scene? The ones... I can tell you who aren't the real ones. The ones who have been left alone for years. It's as simple as that. They don't get taken down. Anyway, they want me to say that the attack in Paris today was a conspiracy. They want me to say that because they want to ridicule this movement completely and anyone in it who... They do not want free, independent thinking. They want one side of Sheeple 1.0 who say it's affecting, it's always Muslims attacking, and they want Sheeple 2.0 on the other side saying it's always a false flag attack. What they don't want is independent voices like mine who say, hold on, let's take one thing at a time. They don't want that. So if you're into my show, follow my Facebook page, or into my stuff because you expect conspiracy circle jerks, okay? You came to the wrong guy because that's not me, okay? Now, as I was saying, I'll get through this somehow. The gorse fire, okay? The gorse fire is a fire burning under the ground, okay? When the conditions are right, you may have this ember that's been burning along a root or a stem deep under the ground for 50 years might suddenly explode into a maelstrom on the surface. Now what happens then is you get a ferocious wildfire. So you had decades of a flickering ember below the soil, below the ground, and then suddenly the conditions were correct, and you had a gorse fire. And these gorse fires, believe it or not, they are like, you would not believe them. A few years ago here, the mountains went on fire. And when I say the mountains went on fire, I mean at night time, the entire mountains from one end to the other, which is about a 20, 30 mile range, was completely orange all along the top. And the place was covered in smoke for days because that one ember had made it to the surface.
and caused a wildfire. And that wildfire is necessary because it rejuvenates the soil. It infuses it with nitrogen. And that's what the soul of the Irish people are today. The burning ember within inside them finally ignited. It finally took off. And the dormancy came to life. And the apathy was removed all of a sudden. And the politicians, the EU globalists, and all the others didn't expect this to happen. And it did. The ember made it forward. Now, we went from a situation where Irish people were incredibly apathetic. They were quite happy watching TV, even when things got bad, even when the European Union and the IMF came in and shafted us. They were still like, oh, you know, I'm angry, but we have to do it. But what changed everything was the water, was the situation with Irish water. That changed everything. Because that unleashed in the Irish people a kind of a repressed memory of a family tragedy. And that family tragedy was the famine and the land clearances. Most of the people in the famine died, not from starvation, but they died of things like disease and exposure. And one of the reasons they did this was because the psychopaths in charge back then wanted to clear the countryside out of people, which they did effectively, get them to go to America, or just have them die, so they could fill the land full of sheep. It happened in Scotland too with the Highland clearances. What they used to do was, they used to burn the thatch off the roof of the houses. And they would do that with the police and the landlords. They were called the Royal Irish Constabulary. Well, they were called like sheriffs. They were actually sheriffs back then at that time. But they would set fire to the thatch roof cottages. Now, the thatch roof cottages were not just made up of thatch. Underneath the thatch, you would have a insulation layer made up of peat, turf. Blocks of turf cut. Very highly, not only an incredible fuel, but also a very good insulator. And that was the insulation in these old thatch roof cottages. That's what kept them so warm. There's one near here that's actually a beautiful restoration of an Irish cottage called Dolly's Cottage. And if you go inside, you can actually see the pieces of turf in the ceiling. So that the thing would burn to a maelstrom, and that meant the family had no roof over their house. So the security was taken away from them, and they were put onto the road. And then the rain came, and then they died of disease. Water. When they came to shut off our water, these despicable cartels made up of individuals and politicians with a cozy relationship, were doing the same thing. They were taking away Irish people's right to survive. It didn't matter or not if they could get water from somewhere else. The symbology of these Irish water workers descending upon communities in order to shut off or to install the means to shut off their water supply triggered a collective memory within the Irish psyche of our people 150 years ago having the sheriffs and the landlords coming around to burn the roofs off our houses. It ignited, and I mean that literally, it ignited something within the soul, and then things changed rapidly, incredibly. It only takes a short time to go from complacency to insurgency. Right before the revolution in Russia, they had the coronation of the Romanovs, Tsar Nicholas. Something like 2 million people went to Moscow for the coronation. In one episode, thousands were killed in a stampede when they were giving out free collectible mugs. That was wild devotion to the Tsar and the Romanovs. All it took was World War I for that to end. There's a very, very fine line between complacency and insurgency, and they pushed us over it. They pushed us over it with the water issue. Now let me explain to you, there's probably people all over the world saying, well, everyone everywhere pays for water. Water is a natural resource and it's finite. No, it isn't. Water is not limited in Ireland. It rains in some parts of this country 300 days plus days a year. A lot of this land is soggy. This is a land of rivers and massive lakes, lochs, surrounded by the ocean where it rains constantly. There are massive aquifers under the ground and underground springs. When they came to frack our water supply, it was a rape. It was a rape of our landscape to pollute, infect, and impregnate the underground water supply. So they would have the excuse. This fracking thing is going nowhere, by the way. People who are protesting fracking don't have to worry about it. This is just it's an energy.com bubble. It'll just be like the .com. It'll vanish. But what they were really after, well, firstly, they wanted to industrialize the countryside. That's why they allowed the wind turbines, because it allowed them to change the planning laws and the codes and the regulation for industrializing and structures in the countryside. That was stage one. The second one was the fracking. Right after that, we had that piece of garbage at Nestle telling us that water wasn't a human right. Ireland is a land of nothing but water. It's like going to Saudi Arabia and telling them they have to have a meter on the amount of sand in the desert, because sand is a finite resource there. That's how absurd it is. One of the guises that they're using to bring in this Irish water monstrosity is they say that, well, lots of the pipes under the ground are leaking. So what? So what? The water still gets to the houses. Where does it go? It eventually ends up in aquifers. Aquifers can be tapped for water. There's no shortage. If we were living in Spain or Italy or Portugal or North Africa and we had massive leaks in our pipes, it would be an issue. It isn't in Ireland because it rains here constantly. It's an infinite resource here. And then people say, well, you have to pay for it through taxes. But the thing is, we already do pay for it through a slew of all kinds of taxes. They just hadn't metered it. The metering was the final violation. This machine was the ultimate gaslighting, the ultimate metering. This was the thing that threw people over the edge. These work crews descending upon neighborhoods, digging a hole in the ground and putting in this electronic device that can be shut off, just like when the sheriffs and the Royal Irish Constabulary and the landed gentry set fire to the thatch above our ancestors' heads. It could be destroyed, and we could be destroyed with it. Now, the person behind Irish Water is a bizarre baby man haircut individual called Dennis O'Brien. This guy is already a billionaire, and he's an insatiable maggot. He is a maggot that has eaten all the flesh on a corpse, and it wasn't enough for it, so it's now trying to burrow into the bones to get at the marrow. That's what he is. Enough is never enough for Dennis O'Brien. Never. He doesn't understand the concept. When he was a little boy, he probably wanted the other kids' toys. He wanted it all. He's baby Dennis. Baby Dennis. Baby Dennis has to get what he wants. Baby Dennis, I'm Baby Dennis O'Brien. I have to get what I want. I'll throw a tantrum, and then I'll go to my newspapers and the 40 media outlets that I own, and I will write bad things about you. I will tell those pieces of crap propagandists who work for me to say bad things about you. How dare you? I'm Dennis O'Brien. And that's what that maggot is like. We should not have to tolerate this creature. This creature is not my God, and he's not the God of other Irish people. He is the modern Trevelyan. And that's how we should see him. Trevelyan was the British diplomat who basically decided that during the famine, sending corn or wheat to Ireland to help the starving millions was a bad idea because it would damage the economy. It would damage the exports of the ones who had the grain. Trevelyan O'Brien is how he should be seen. He's a monster. He's not a billionaire hotshot businessman. And he's a maggot. And this maggot controls Irish Water, and he also controls all the media outlets. And these media outlets are what he uses to wage war on anyone who dares to question him. And that's what we did with that band in Dublin back in that song you heard at the beginning of The Distance. We built a stockade and said, oh, no way, Jose. With your bizarre, like he has a haircut. His haircut looks like someone put a bowl on his head and then trimmed around the front. You know those kind of institutionalized haircuts. It's this really strange kind, and it's almost like this little boy persona that hides this kind of ruthless, insatiable creature behind it. He's known within the ruling party in Ireland, Fine Gael, founded out of a neo-Nazi party called the Blue Shirts. The early days of that party, you can see photographs of them doing the C. Kyle salute, dressed in black or just in blue, sorry. And that's the party today. They're talking about inclusivity. So those of you who are stupid enough to actually fall in love with National Socialism, remember that it's all the same thing, okay? You've just been duped again. But anyway, they call him Uncle Dennis. Uncle Dennis. And that's what's happening in Ireland. On top of that, they have the austerity measures. We have the Minister for Health saying, hey, get used to dying in the corridors of hospitals. That's where he's done. And if you go around Ireland, one of the things you notice is that they have this thing called ministerial plaques. And what they are, if a wing is open in an airport, if a stretch of motorway is opened, if a new bus station is opened, the minister in charge shows up, the Minister for Psychopathy, whatever he's called, shows up and pulls a little curtain and a plaque opens and says, this bus station was opened by the Minister of, Flatulence in 2011, and his name is there. Like they're gods, these are gods, and they built monoliths. See, our ancestors built monoliths to the stars. Nowadays, these creatures build monoliths to themselves, ministerial plaques, and that's what they're like. And that's all they want. They want ministerial plaques. This is all they want. They don't care about anything else. And I know all countries are corrupt. I know all countries have scumbag politicians, but there's something particularly feckless and obnoxious about the Irish ones. When the IMF was coming in, and it was becoming rapidly apparent that the previous government, had completely mismanaged the economy, all these cretins suddenly had health problems. Minister so-and-so has to resign because he has a health problem. The most infamous of these is a Minister for Transport called Martin Cullen. He was also the minister who brought in these e-voting machines that didn't work. He suddenly jumped. She was one of the first ones to jump ship because he knew the gravy train was over. He was showing up at the government buildings with a walking stick, pretending his back was broken. Within no time, he's living in Florida with some chick and selling paintings And he lives on a fucking golf course. And he talks about getting a round of golf in every day. So his back was mysteriously cured by moving to a golf course in Florida. Hallelujah. And that's what we have to, the straw that broke the camel's back has happened. It's happened in Ireland. And that's why you can't sit on the fence anymore in this country and say, sure, be right. What can you do? You can't do it. Those days are over. And it's, oh, come on, Thomas. Come on. Isn't that the hysterical comparing a water meter to, the sheriffs and the bailiffs boring the thatch off the houses in the old days? No, it isn't. No, it isn't, moron. Because without water, you're dead. Without a roof over your head in the Irish winter, you're dead. Do you understand that? There's only two people left in Ireland, two types of people in Ireland left that are not pissed off anymore. The first ones are the morons who will always be watching Mrs. Brown's Boys, the completely unfunny show, and British soccer on the TV, with tears gushing down their cheeks when their beloved Reading scores a goal against Colchester. Okay. They're gone. They're finished. We'll never have. They're finished. The hell with them. They should be considered having a disability. Okay, they're so detached from reality. Okay, the other type are ones who have a vested stake in the system, and this is what makes it really sinister in this country, because during the boom, the government made sure to lavish the civil service and government workers with massive pay rises that were equal to what the highest salaries in the private sector were at the time, which were huge, with massive pensions and a job for life with no accountability. Okay, what they were really doing was developing an Orwellian inner class, the Orwellian inner party, just like in 1984, an Orwellian inner party, and they would become the bulldogs of the establishment, because they had been so pampered and so protected that it had given them a sense of status that we are the civil servants and the rest of them are just the proles, okay? And our job is to savage anyone who gets between us, who tries to get between us and our benevolent gods in government, who furnish us with these massive pensions, massive salaries, and jobs for life. And that's what they did. So they created this firewall between them and us. Now, I know the civil servants who probably are not like that, that they are on our side, and they're disgusted by it too, but not enough of them. The majority of them are on in the internet, on Irish message boards, and they're doing things like ridiculing. If you say something like, I got the water meter guys came today, I'm not happy about it, the first thing they'll post on the Irish political boards is lizards, Jim Core, conspiracy theorists, laugh out loud. They're so well trained, these types, and that's what they do, and that's how they function. So they have this firewall. We have to ignore that and go straight for the ruling class, and not necessarily the politicians. Stop calling them by their first names. I'll say that till I'm blue in the face. Stop calling them by their first names. That's what we do in Ireland. The people call politicians by their first. That crap has to stop, okay? They're not our personal friends. We have to go for not them so much, but the people like Dennis O'Brien and the media. Find out who these journalists are who work for them, what their names are, and they're the enemy. They're the ones they're the real traitors. It doesn't matter who's in power, because the government are just monkeys. They're just bottle washers for the corporations. The corporations are the issue. They're the ones that we have to deal with. And that's not just in Ireland, that's in every country. If you stop putting your hopes in a political party or some political, and forget about them, they're irrelevant. Okay, democracy is dead. It never properly existed anyway. But it's dead now. It's dead for sure now. Forget about the monkey in the polling station. Their name there. Forget about them. Go for the puppet masters. They're the ones we should be really going after. If the next time we have 100,000+ people in Dublin, instead of holding up a sign saying, like some Egypt holding up a sign saying, Ende, give us a few, lend us a bob or something like that, hold up signs saying, Dennis O'Brien, traitor. Trevelyan O'Brien, traitor. Irish Independent newspaper, traitors. Today FM, traitors. News Talk 10M, 104 FM, traitors. Then you'll get things done, because then you will force the ones who haven't had to make a decision yet, who are comfortable sitting on the fence, sucking on the tit of Irish water. Then they will have to make a decision, and there's no way they can win. I've always said from day one, since I got on this scene, that the battle against the psychopathic control grid takes place in the human consciousness. It's in the psyche. We play on their minds. We play on their insecurities. We expose them as fools. We feck with their egos. What do you mean you're a journalist? You're not a journalist. You're a paid propagandist for Trevelyan O'Brien. Get away from me, you moron. Who are you? You're nothing. You're not the media anymore. You're the enemy. And that's how to play with them. And I've got to take a break now. My throat is sore. I hope I'm on the phone now. I hope you can still hear me. And Paul, I don't know what the next song is. I've lost complete train of thought tonight. And Paula, could you play a song, please, while I take a break? Thank you. And welcome back to the second segment of tonight's Philosophy of Now with me, Thomas Sheridan. We'll try and make up at the end for some of the time we lost from this attack at the beginning. I told you a couple of weeks ago that the server was attacked, and it was attacked. What happened was, over at Reality Bites, who hosts the show, about realitybites.com, that's B-Y-T-E-S, they were suddenly hit with something like 1.5 million hits on the server, which basically froze it. This is how you do it. And on the fly, Neil and Paula had to get in a techie guy, call him in and get him in, and he ran some kind of script or program to build a firewall. And if they can't get you there, they'll hit you somewhere else. So, you know, thankfully, I hope you can still hear me on the phone, and this is how I'll be for the rest of the show tonight. But they're not going to stop us. Even if I have to pre-record the show beforehand and send it in, I'll do it. Even if I have to move it to... If it came to me having to record it on USB discs and mailing it out to people, I'll still do it. You're not going to shut me up. You're not going to shut people like us up. Now, before I get to the main story, I was just thinking, while the song was playing there, I was just looking at the news, and there's a story on the Daily Mail, which is like typical of like how rotten journalism is today. And they take something that should be very important, and they completely wreck it. And the article is called, "Addicted to Posting Selfies, Then You're Probably Selfish and May Even Be a Psychopath," claims study. Researchers from Ohio State University said men, now this is interesting, they said men, they didn't say women. This is completely keep the idea alive that only males are psychopaths. Researchers from Ohio State University said men who share lots of selfies are displaying psychopathic traits such as lack of empathy. Well, you see, that's bollocks, because psychopaths don't have a lack of empathy. Psychopaths have empathy. All empathy is the ability to understand social intelligence. It's caused by mirror neurons. Mirror neurons fire in sync, and it's just a way of having, for instance, SS troops murdering Jewish women and children in the Ukraine. They had empathy. They had empathy for the SS division who were doing it. You understand? That all empathy is, it's a social intelligence. What they don't mention here is what we really need to talk about, and that's compassion. Men who Photoshop their pictures before sharing them show signs of narcissism and self-objectification, the study found. This should be funny. Researchers revealed that objectification may be a bigger problem for men than previously. That's what I'll go with the men, okay? Whether it's a pop star or a friend, you're unlikely to bat an eyelid if they snap or post a picture of themselves online. But people, that's because it's normal. But people who share lots of selfies are displaying psychopathic traits, according to studies. Now, these same Muppets would they have said that Jimmy Savile demonstrated psychopathic traits? Oh no. People who are just like taking photographs of themselves, old-fashioned, harmless vanity, well, they're the new psychopaths, according to these Muppets. It found that men who regularly post selfies on sites such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are more likely to be narcissistic, impulsive, and display other characteristics, such as a lack of empathy. This is what you got your science degree for, okay? Right, this is what you got it for. So, I'm a scientist, and we have made a study, and we've discovered that rain is wet. And we've also discovered that water probably falls from the clouds to the ground because of gravity. This is like the level of this bullshit. Oh, there's the FCC on my ass again. Oh, double. Okay. Researchers have also revealed that self-objectification may be a bigger problem for men than previously thought, with many taking time and effort to improve their selfies before posting them online. So what? So what? Psychologists from Ohio State University found that men who post selfies regularly scored higher than average levels of antisocial traits. Well, they don't like going to pubs or something? This is amazing, right? Okay, so a peacock, you know when a peacock, the male peacock shows all his feathers and he gets all the female peacocks horny, right? He's now a psychopath, according to these guys, right? You know those monkeys in the zoo that have the big red arses? That big red arse is actually used to attract females. So the monkeys in the zoo with the big red arses, they're psychopaths. For example, men who doctor their images to improve their appearance show signs of narcissism and self-objectification, said Assistant Professor of Communication Jesse Fox. Could you imagine what he must look like? Narcissism is most commonly associated with vanity, but as a pathological flaw relates to a feeling of being more intelligent, attractive, and better than others, according to a study published by the journal. You see, these are all like, you know, they're all like really geeky, unattractive people who work in a science lab, and they go home at night and they see like good-looking or attractive people taking selfies of themselves, which is none of their business, right? And then they decide, well, I'm not beautiful, I'm not attractive like he or she is, so therefore we're going to call them psychopaths. Narcissism is most commonly, men who put their pictures online as soon as they can are more likely to show signs of psychopathy. Oh my God. Which is defined as having a lack of empathy as regards to others. And no, it's not. Oh man, where these morons come from? This is what universities are turning out now. Guys who do that and take selfies are harming no one. The same for women. It's harmless. It's old, you know, murdering someone is evil, right? Going in and beating up an old lady and taking her money is evil, right? That's psychotic. But according to these Muppets at this university, unless they take a selfie of themselves after they've beaten up the old lady, they're not psychopaths. Professor Fox explained, psychopathy is characteristic by impulsivity. No, it's not. Not unless psychopaths plan, they manipulate, they think things over. Psychopaths are not highly impulsive. They can be impulsive in certain situations like sexuality or something like that, but they're characterized by deviousness, by planning, by observing. This Professor Fox is an absolute dope. They are going to snap the shots and put them online. Oh, so you hear that, folks? If you take a photograph yourself on your phone and say, oh, look nice there, and you stick them online, oh, well, that means you're a psychopath, according to this Professor Fox. They want to see themselves. They don't want to spend time editing. There are days I pray that there's a meteorite or an asteroid heading towards this dump. I really do. If this is what passes for high education, science, and intellect. To come to their conclusions, the researchers surveyed 800 men. 800 men, they'd be tipped, and I bet you every single one of them was a college student, right? And What are guys in college like? They're looking to get laid. They're often working out. They're often, they're looking to get chicks. They're not psychopaths. This is what young guys do. As well as giving them psychological questionnaires to establish their personality traits. No, the only way you can tell someone is psychopathic is by an fMRI brain scan. That's the only way you can tell for sure. It's becoming like Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous, if you read their website, if you have a drink at Christmas time, a glass of shandy or a glass of sherry at your Christmas dinner, you're an alcoholic. It's becoming like that now with the psychopath stuff. The survey asked them, and this, I think it's an agenda, they're trying to water down the psychopath issue more and more and more, so eventually everyone thinks they're a psychopath to some degree. The survey asked them how often they post pictures on sites like Instagram and Twitter, and whether they Photoshop their selfies first. Professor Fox said, he's like something from The Simpsons, this guy. It's not surprising that men who post a lot of selfies and spend time editing them are more narcissistic. But there's nothing wrong with narcissistic. Once it's not pathological and you're using it to hurt another person, like walking, I'm better looking than you because you're ugly, then it's pathological. Otherwise, it's harmless. These people are probably so unattractive that an attractive woman or an attractive man is narcissistic for no other reason than they're attractive. The more interesting findings is that they also score higher on other antisocial personality traits. Psychopathy are more prone to self-objectification. But he doesn't even explain that what it is. Most people don't think that men even do that sort of thing, but they definitely do. Of course they do. Men are peacocks. Young guys in college walking around with a boner trying to get laid will do these kinds of things. Men are peacocks. This is normal. Young guys are My God, when I think about me when I was like in my early 20s, standing on stage with a guitar in my hand and giving it up large to the girls in the front row, Jesus, that practically makes me Jack the Ripper, according to these guys. It was a bit of fun, it was a bit of a laugh, and then I grew out of it. Most people don't think that men even do that sort of thing, but they definitely do. You see, this is Mr. Fox, Professor Fox, and the other cases at this university who are judging the world by what they're not. You understand what I'm saying? Like, this is like sectarianism almost. Like, we and the other buck-toothed, acneed nerds who couldn't get people to believe that just being into science made you sexy, we're not like that. So that means the people who are like that, there's something wrong with them. They're all psychopaths. She warned that such behavior can lead to further problems. Like what? Getting girls? We know that or getting fellas in the girls' case. We know that self-objectification leads to a lot of terrible things, like depression and eating disorders in women. So they just went from men to women here, okay? Self-objectification is normal at an early age. When people have babies or they fall in love and they get married, that's less important to them. But it's perfectly normal when they're young. This guy believes it causes depression and eating disorders in women. That's actually quite sexist what he said, you think about it. There's nothing wrong with a girl thinking she's hot stuff, and there's nothing wrong with a guy thinking the same. It's only when they're not that, and they're putting down others, that there's something wrong. With the growing use of social networks, everyone is more concerned about the appearance. So, what's wrong with that? Do you go to a wedding in overalls? This means that self-objectification may become a bigger problem for men as well as for women. And then they have a picture of Kim Kardashian. She looks like she should be... When I look at her, she looks like she should be on O'Connell Bridge with a drugged baby in her arm, wearing a shawl and looking for money. Well, that's racist, sorry. Selfies may be a sign of illness. 2/3 of patients with body image disorders obsessively take photographs of themselves. But that's because they have body disorders, image problems, okay? But that's not the problem with selfies. Experts link selfies Experts link selfies with mental illness. Oh God! In April last year, by suggesting suggested, there we go, good old Daily Mail and its typos, that people regularly searching for the perfect angle from which to portray themselves could in some cases be ill. So, okay, I got my phone here, right, and I'm taking a picture and I'm going, oh, I've got a double chin, okay, but I've got really nice eyes. So what I'll do is I'll focus on the eyes, okay? That means you're mentally ill, okay? Now, if I took a photograph of my bollocks and put them online, that would make me mentally ill. But doing, getting the right angle, look, there are loads of attractive and people on my Facebook page, and they all do this, okay? And they all move the camera around a certain angle to take it. There's nothing wrong with that. No one wants to see a bad picture of themselves. The problem is Professor Cox and the rest of these guys on his survey have never seen a good picture of themselves. I could see, what's his name, Shortley Smedlington of the socialist, anti-misogynist, anti-Nazi League, going, I fully agree with the findings of this research, because it's become apparent to me that these people who are not in the demo last week were too busy being pathologically obsessed with their attractiveness, while I was trying to save working class people from themselves. Dr. David Veal, a consultant psychiatrist, here we go, at the South London and Maudsley NHS Trust and the Priory Hospital. Okay, the Priory, that's it. For those who don't know outside this part of the world, the Priory is where celebrity drug addicts and alcoholics go, okay? Let me explain to you, Dr. David Veal, okay? Not all of us are the singer from the Libertines. We're normal people. Or what's her name that was married to Brian McFadden, the one who does the Iceland ads? That never made any sense to me. Man, Brian McFadden is in a boy band, right? And he marries this one that was thrown out of a girl band that looks like she's no personality or anything. I can't remember her name. Kerry Katona, that's right. And she does ads for a supermarket. It's a typical boy band thing, or the football player thing. Marry the first person you meet. Okay. So Kerry Katona, this guy, Dr. David Veal at the Priory, thinks that everyone is like Kerry Katona or Pete Doherty. Told the Sunday Mirror, oh, here we go, the font of all knowledge. 2 out of 3 of all patients who come in to see me with body dysmorphic disorders. You can't hear me right now, but I'm slapping my head. Let me repeat this. Body dysmorphic disorders. Oh, God. Since the rise of camera phones, have a compulsion to repeatedly take and post selfies on social media sites. He told the Mail Online, taking selfies is not an addiction. It's a symptom of body dysmorphic disorder that involves checking one's appearance. So to hear it all, those of you who've ever taken a selfie or more than one selfie for your Facebook page, according to this doctor, you've got a disorder called body dysmorphic disorder, and you're sick, you need hospitalization, you need medication, expert guidance, so you don't do anything as evil as take photographs of yourself. Cognitive behavioral therapy is often used to help patients moderate their obsessive behavior relating to their appearance. So there you go. I'll start practicing cognitive behavioral therapy. Here's what you do, right? When you hold up a phone and you go to take a picture of yourself, you say to yourself, oh, I'm an ugly bastard, I don't have to take this picture. You're cured, okay? In one extreme case of the disorder, a British teenager, Danny Bowman, tried to commit suicide because he was unhappy with the appearance in the selfies he took. That's Danny Bowman, okay? That kid, that teenager, is not typical of... See, they always take one case that's overblown and they say it's everybody, okay? He was so desperate to attract girls, well, that's what teenage boys do. He spent 10 hours a day taking more than 200 selfies trying to find the perfect image. But when you go to, look, when I was growing up, we used to go to, discos and dances at school, and the boys used to pull in their stomachs, and they used to, move a certain, try and look attractive to the girl, so when you walk over like John Wayne, or no, like what's his name, Tony Manero on Saturday Night Fever. You walked over there, you know, at an Irish disco in the late 1970s with your white suit, your bell-bottom trousers, your black polished boots, and your flaming curly red hair and freckles. When you walked over there, when you took what was the most horrifying walk of your life across that feckin' dance floor, and you walked over to Sharon Gorman and you said, Sharon, do you want to dance? And she said, feck off, you ugly bastard. Okay? That's normal, okay? And then you walked back to the lads and they'd say, what happened? And she says, oh, she's meeting me afterwards, lads. Whoa! That's what young people do, okay? Nowadays, the paradigms, I sound like Russell Brand, the paradigms, the narrative has changed. The narrative has changed. And nowadays they take selfies, okay? Same thing. Have these guys ever been young people? In the article for Psychology Today, an absolute rag. That's an absolute total rag, that magazine. Dr. Pamela Rutledge, director of Media Psychology Research Center in Boston, Massachusetts, said, selfies frequently trigger perceptions of self-indulgence and attention-seeking dependency that raises the damned if you do, damned if you don't specter of either narcissism or low self-esteem. That's what passes for sanity today. That's what passes for an expert opinion today. You take a selfie of yourself and you send it to someone online on your Facebook page. You're either a psychopath or you have, what do they call it, body dysmorphic disorder. The world has gone mad. We're going to play the last song before I get into the final bit of the show, and this is Rush and Mystic Rhythms.
And we're back, and I'm back on Skype as well. I've just taken a selfie of myself, like Kira said, and I'll put it up on Facebook. We have not been defeated. We're back online. And I don't care what anyone says. We were taken down. The internet did not go out for any reason on its own. They wanted to try and kill the show, whatever. Screw them. It's not going to go that. It's not going to go that way. And that was fantastic of Paula calling me up and getting me on the phone, and I really appreciate that. It's just fantastic to have that kind of backup. And we're back for the final hour or so of the Velocity of Now with better quality sound, I hope. Can you hear me? WMBC. Did you ever see that film, Private Parts, the Howard Stern film? It's a brilliant scene in it where when he goes to work for WMBC, you have this guy who's the station manager, and he says, I'll break that bastard, no problem for you, to the manager to try and get him off the station. And it's a whole bit where the guy goes, Howard, you gotta say the call station letters properly. WMBC. WMBC. And it's just like, it sums up mass media perfectly. That's a great film if you haven't seen Howard Stern's Private Parts. It's a lot deeper and a lot more telling than you think it is. Okay, I'm back on, and what did we talk about tonight? We spoke about the Irish water thing and the situation in Ireland. We spoke about the madness of diagnosing people who take selfies of themselves as being, psychopathic and narcissistic, and these shrinks and these expert bodies of the DSM have absolutely nothing better to do with their lives. Now, it's funny that that happened, but today really is a very, very dark day, and there's no getting around that. What happened in Paris with the Charlie Hebdo murders in the building. Let's talk about this for a while, for a start. Okay, if you it doesn't matter if you believe it was a conspiracy, it was a false flag, okay? And it doesn't matter if you believe it was Islamic fundamentalists who did this, like I currently do, going on the evidence at the moment. Freedom of speech died today. That's what happened. Freedom of expression. And there's no winners in a situation when freedom of speech or freedom of expression dies than the psychopaths in charge. They're the only ones who win, ever. Alex Jones, to his credit, said something. He posted, I don't know if it was him or someone on his website, posted something today saying that the PC Brigade must start to own their own crap in all this by controlling free speech and putting limits on what people can say, what jokes they can say, making sure they don't offend anybody. You know, I'm talking about like the Chorley Smedlingtons of the Socialist Alliance League of anti-misogynist and anti-racist, and we find any joke that's slightly homophobic or racist, they must be banned, especially if working class people tell them, because we don't like working class people having a good sense of humor, because working class people tend to be funny. Bernard Manning, we don't like him because Bernard Manning was funny. But Chorley Smedlington, I certainly approve of Stephen Fry. He's harmless. He's very, very funny because he doesn't offend anybody, because he's politically correct. And I remember back in the day, Benny Hill was being taken down, and Bernard Manning, by the likes of what was his name, Ben Elton, and the rest of that Oxbridge Brigade, and that whole shower, who portrayed them as sexist, homophobic, racist, and they brought in their alternative comedy, quote-unquote, unfunny. Translation, alternative comedy, unfunny. And I think there's something more to Benny Hill demise than just cultural Marxism. I think Benny Hill was taken out. I don't mean he was assassinated, but I think his heart was definitely broken. He had the number one show on in the world. Do you know that? The Benny Hill's show was the number one show in the world at the time. Comedy show. It was the number one program in British TV. It was produced by Thames Television in London. The show was simple and silly, but if you notice in a lot of those sketches, he made fun of authority figures, and a lot of them he made fun of BBC types. Remember, he wasn't on the BBC, and there's even sketches of him having a go at Jimmy Savile. And he was, what he did was, it was silly and kind of childish, but it was also kind of, those song parodies were always very clever. But you'll always see that he was the ultimate jester, was Benny Hill. He mocked the establishment by making them, remember, like when they'd have and they'd have like the blonde girl in the miniskirt running, it was always, you remember, it was always a judge or a lawyer or a politician or someone like that who was chasing after the little girl. Do you not think he may have been blown the whistle? Now that we know it went on in the halls of British respectable establishment in those days. But anyway, so we have, apparently, from what I can tell, you see, just because false flags happen doesn't mean that every single attack is a false flag. As simple as that. And yes, Islamic extremists do exist. As hard as that is for the average tufa to accept, Islamic extremists and killers do exist. I have doubts about ISIS. I don't particularly believe that ISIS are real. That is just something not right there. I'm totally down with Naomi Wolf on that side. But this thing that happened today, I think that was what it was, as the mainstream media are reporting it. the magazine, the satirical magazine. See, satire is the greatest force on this earth. See, there's two forces on this earth that are totally awesome, and they're battling it out on the world stage. One is religious dogmatism or fanaticism of any kind, maybe political. The other is satire. And both are in an eternal conflict for the human soul. And fanatics and crazies and cult members don't understand satire, and they don't like it. And this Charlie Hebdo magazine, they were attacked, they were firebombed last year by Muslim extremists, and the cartoonist even had bodyguards a lot of the time, and they did the right thing. They didn't back down. You should never back down. Freedom of expression must always be allowed to remain. It doesn't matter who it offends. It cannot be stopped. Because if you take away the ability to take the piss out of someone else, then you might as well give up on the human race. Because right back to the beginning of time, our ancestors were having a laugh and taking the piss out of one another. The lads who are building Newgrange, I can guarantee you that if we were to go back then, the one thing we would understand culturally is when some of the lads and the women who are building Newgrange are having a laugh taking a piss out of someone that was there. Or their boss, or the druid, or the king, or whatever. They did that. And if you think that should be stopped, because I see no difference between the PC brigade and those pieces of crap who walked into the Charlie Hebdo offices today. I see no difference. You're just bad. Shortly Smithson, the socialist, anti-sexist, anti-misogynist league, is just as wicked and evil as those guys. Don't tell me that it's not because he didn't kill anybody. They are. They're still doing the same thing. They're trying to murder the jester. And the jester is the only hope we have left, really. There's no other hope. As we enter the technocratic society, we've only got creativity and the jester left to give us a hope. You can sit there politically debating things, living in fear, showing fear porn. But the only way we can take somebody down is the Emperor's New Clothes. We all have to be that little kid in the Emperor's New Clothes who said, that douche isn't wearing anything. We all have to be like that. And that's what those people who were murdered today were doing. They were saying to these Islamic fanatics, and remember they went after every religion. You go and look, go Google the covers of that magazine, and you see that they take the piss out of Jews, Catholics, Protestants, Muslims, everybody. They weren't just taking the piss out of one group. Unfortunately, the Abrahamic religions which have infected the West since they crossed the Bosphorus have been killing our poets and artists and our jesters and our jokers from day one. The Christians and the Jews have learned how to behave themselves in recent centuries, but the Muslims, a sizable proportion of their population, hasn't. I know most Muslims are not extremists. I know vast majority of Muslims are not like that, but there's still a psychic problem, consciousness problem within the heart of the Islamic community that only people within Islam themselves can address. Well, they're not addressing it properly or at all. So we had, I just can't imagine the horror that must have been witnessed inside that office. And of course, the two groups, they jump into it. You have the mainstream Sheeple 1.0, who hates every Muslim that ever lived. And you have the alternative conspiracy Sheeple 2.0, who thinks that every single, it definitely, without any little proof or no proof at all, it's a conspiracy, an inside flag, inside job, false flag. I don't watch videos of people being murdered. Okay, I won't do that. I'm not into snuff. I don't get my jollies by watching a policeman being machine gunned. on the pavement. It doesn't interest me. That kind of thing upsets me. But a lot of the Infinite Love Brigade and the empath types seem to have an addiction to watching the snuff, so they can research. So they watch some guy being shot. The main bone of contention is that if he was shot that close to an AK-47, his head would explode. True, I agree. The head would have shattered into 1,000 pieces. There would have been no head left. But what if he missed? Have you even thought about that one? They didn't even take aim properly. I fired an AK-47 at a firing range in America, and I can tell you the gun is notoriously difficult to hit a target with. The AK-47 is a very simple and simplistic design of semi-automatic. There's basically nothing inside it. That's why it's so popular. It doesn't break. There's literally a magazine with a latch. When you pull the trigger, the round is deposited in front of a spring. The spring pushes it forward. You fire the gun. The spring recoils. A very simple mechanism, and the bullet shoots through a short barrel. If you put it on automatic, the thing literally flies around in your hand. You can't hold it straight. That's why that's why it's not, as a singular assault weapon, it's not that good. The reason why the AK-47 has had millions of them have been used, hundreds of millions, is because it's incredibly reliable. It's so simple, nothing breaks. It's easy to repair, and it takes rounds of ammunition that are easily procured. That's all. But on the downside, because it's a functional utilitarian assault rifle, it has flaws, and the flaw being it's not very accurate. You have to take careful aim. The bullets, as soon as they leave it's not like see, people think that guns, like in the cowboy films, you can shoot a gun. You see the guy in like the High Chaparral or the old cowboy shows or John Wayne movies. There's a guy at the top of a ravine and a guy down below with a Smith & Wesson revolver, and he shoots the guy from about 200 yards and hits him perfectly. That's impossible in real life, because after this certain distance, the bullet veers off. And that's what happens with the AK-47. It's a notoriously difficult weapon to take aim with because of two things: the recoil and the short barrel. The reason why the guy's head didn't explode is because the terrorist, the Muslim guy who shot at him, missed. It's as simple as that. He missed him. That's it. That's what I can see. I can see the guy, that's what happened. He missed. He'd already killed the man because the man was dying from already being previously being hit. So the coup de grace, the shot to the head, didn't matter. And so while everyone's watching these videos of this man in his last seconds of his life and robbing him of his dignity by trying to figure out if it was an inside job, never stop to once think that the guy, the terrorist, missed him. And that's what I believe happened. These Islamic fanatics exist. In Islam, to draw the Prophet is considered the most horrific mortal sin of all. To draw the Prophet in a sexual, which they did on the magazine after they were firebombed, they showed a picture of him French kissing a rabbi, Muhammad French kissing a guy, I think it was a rabbi or something, is so, anyone who's ever dealt with a cult like I have, that these people do not like being told what they really are. They believe themselves to be special. They believe themselves to be infallible, and they wrap themselves in a code of fanaticism. And there's no room because literally their brains have been wired to only believe the dogma. They're literally the neural pathways and their cognition is completely and 100% hardwired into only believing, because that's what happens to the human brain. If you read a book, a religious book, or you're a flagellant, or you're sitting there going, hey, whatever the religion is, all the time, your brain gets wired. Just like if you're working in a factory and you're doing a complex assembly job. I've worked in factories doing complex assembly job. After a few days or a week or a month, you find that in your head you can be having fantasies about, being in Baywatch instead of Hasselhoff, and you can assemble these products without even thinking about it. It just happens because what's happened is your neural pathways have wired themselves, permanently wired themselves, as well as it's been shown now that the DNA in your brain will also align itself towards the task. Human beings have a very easy to control cerebral partition, cognition. And so the same thing happens with religious fanaticism, whether in a cult waiting for the flying saucer gods to come, or in a cult like Catholicism where you have a flagellant whipping himself. The same thing. You cannot break your programming. And so when someone produces a piece of satire which directly confronts your programming, what happens is there is a flood of stress hormones like norepinephrine and adrenaline from the lower brain stem, and you want to destroy the messenger because you cannot comprehend, because literally your neuro and chemical minds, your neural and chemical partitions in your brain have been so wired that a chemical release that causes you to go crazy. If this turns out, okay, let's take out the most outlandish conspiracy theory. The artists inside the magazine and the editors were told that they're probably going to be murdered. And then the French police says, what we'll do is we will construe and invent a false flag attack where you'll be shipped out of the magazine, given a new identity and your family's a new name, but you can still continue to create the ads from afar using your new identity, and will pretend you were murdered. And this way we can also deal with the radical Islamists within inside France at the same time. That would be the most outlandish conspiracy theory. On the other hand, you could have things in between where it could justify a French military action in Chad. And on the other hand, it's the real thing. Which currently, that's what I believe it is. Okay? All those scenarios all lead to the same appalling place. The freedom of speech is dead. And there's no good in it. So, as it stands, I believe it is an Islamic terrorist attack until other evidence comes forward, and I'll leave it at that. And I'm willing to change my opinion, but not based on, Nigel down in Guildford smoking 15 spliffs and watching YouTube videos of the shot of the policeman on the ground 15 times an hour. I'm not going to go with that. Sorry. And I'm not going to join conspiracy circle jerking just because we've had false flags in the past doesn't mean make them all false flag. I stay independent and I do my own thing and I take things one step at a time. I'm not interested in being a hero to anyone except my own conscience. And I think that's not a bad way to live for any of us. On another matter, there was a strange experience around all this. And I'm sure in weeks or months to come, people will be saying Sheridan is making this shit up. The FCC again. Sorry, lads. He's making this stuff up. But yesterday morning, I woke up about 5 a.m. when the cats was going nuts, and I fell back asleep again. And I had the most incredibly vivid dream, and I posted it when I woke up on Facebook, so the proof is there, even though I know you don't believe me. Or someone would say, Sheridan had foreknowledge, because he's a Mossad agent. I fell asleep, and I had the most vivid dream that I've had in a very long time, of guys who looked like they were from the Middle East. They didn't have hoods on their faces like these guys today, holding AK-47s and going to a hole in the side of a stone church and firing. It's making my stomach sick thinking about this right now, but it's what happened. Firing the AK-47s into the hole in the side of a church. It was filmed from the air like it was done from a helicopter or from security cameras mounted on poles. And that's what I saw. That's what I saw in the dream, okay? But it was a church, okay? And someone I spoke to today about this says, Thomas, do you not think the church was your idea of a church? The church of satire, comedy, and freedom of expression. And that's what the church represented. And a place like Charlie Hebdo or Viz magazine or anything like that would be a church to you because it represents all the things that I personally find sacred, such as satire, such as comedy, such as taking the piss, such as not being afraid to express your feelings and standing up to dogmatic fanatics. And yeah, I think I had a premonition. I had a premonition dream, and that's the end of it. I saw the attacks in Paris about 18 hours earlier, before they happened, in my sleep. Can I explain it? No. Am I saying I have a gift? No. Am I saying you should follow me and worship me? No. Am I saying it makes me special and I have a special time? No. I believe we all have these things because it's not the first time these second things have happened to me. And I can tell you I'm not happy about it. I don't feel wonderful about the fact I had this dream. So we're going to have all the douchebags in years to come saying, oh, he made that up. That didn't really happen. No, it happened. Go on my Facebook page and you'll see that 18 hours before the attack, I posted, and I never really post about dreams that I have online, except the joke things, that I had a vivid dream of an attack of people firing AK-47s into a hole in the side of a church. And the photographs were taken from the air, like they were taken from security footage or overhead cameras, just like what happened in Paris this morning. What does it mean? I don't know, but it just shows that we all have, there is a collective unconscious, and I don't care what you say about me. You could say it's all bollocks and everything. I had that dream. And to stress the point, I didn't even think about that dream today until someone else brought it up. And they said, Thomas, you had a dream yesterday about fellas firing automatic rifles into the side of a church. And I said, oh my God. And I had such a sick feeling to my stomach that I had to go down and lie down for a while. It sit with me so badly. I didn't like it, but it happened. And I don't care what anyone says, and the proof is there. I posted it online beforehand, and some are going to say, oh, it's bollocks, but I've never had a dream that vivid in years. Well, not years, but like a couple of years. I haven't had a dream that vivid. It was as clear as day, and it happened. Now, I remember my reaction during the dream. It was kind of interesting. I had a feeling that what I was seeing was real, that it wasn't a stage thing, and that's probably playing an element in why I believe that this thing that happened today is what the mainstream media is saying it is. So maybe I'm wrong in that sense. I'm never afraid to admit I'm wrong. If I am, I change my opinion now and again because I'm not a religious nut. I'm not a fanatic. If I was to suddenly discover that all my work in the psychopaths was bullshit, sorry, FCC, number 3, I'm off the air, was bollocks, I would admit it. I wouldn't have a problem with it. I'd say, yeah, new information has come in, and that's it. That's cool. I'm not a cult leader or guru. I'm just a regular guy researching like the rest of you, but and now and again I could be proven. I've been proven wrong. Well, I've backtracked on a couple of things, but not too many. I'm not trying to be narcissistic about it, but a few things I've backtracked on, and that's only not because I was wrong. It was just I was going with, I'd gone in the wrong line of investigation. And that may happen with this event in Paris today. But no matter what, as I said, it doesn't matter because they attacked free speech. And this is where we should this is why I'm glad to see the protests in France and all around the world. That's important. It doesn't matter who's behind it. But, the real quest for justice here is not just arresting the people who caused these murders. The real quest for justice is to say, you're not going to stop us. I would hope that tomorrow, it's not going to happen, but that every single newspaper in Europe would print the last cover of Charlie Hebdo on their front page, just to say, screw you to all the fascists, no matter who they be, all the religious fanatics and all the cult members, that you're not going to stop us. Because I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You look at the version of the comic that we have in this part of the world for adults, Viz, that's published in the north of England. There's more truth in one issue of Viz than there is in a month of the mainstream media. Viz has used satire to tell us the truth. So when the comic began in the 80s, you look at what happened with all these politicians, and there was a character back in the early 90s in Viz called Baxter Basics, MP. And the comic strip revolved around a British politician who was preaching family values and back to basics. That's why they call him Baxter Basic. And at the same time he was doing this, he was with portraying a family man issue. He was with rent boys and things like that. And there's even one very funny comic strip where he's standing on stage saying, I know after this recent sex scandal which I was framed in, that my family and constituents will stand beside me, and under the podium is a guy giving him a blowjob. And so that was Viz telling us back then what British politicians and all politicians are like. They had another strip called The Modern Parents, which was a fantastic send-up of the Charlie Smedlingtons types, these politically correct, low carbon footprint, fair trade coffee, modern parents. And there's one classic, I'm sure you can find it online, where they show it says England 1197, and it shows all these people dressed in medieval clothes going, the end of the world is nigh, we have been judged for our sins, God will punish us, the cataclysms of fire are coming. And then underneath it, the exact same strip, but they're put in modern clothes, the same people, and it's a climate change awareness event, and they're saying, end of the world, we are being judged for our sins. It was just a genius piece of thing, showing that these people who are these climate change activists are just a modern version of these doomsday merchants that you had in the Middle Ages saying that the end is nigh. Exact same thing. And that's what makes Viz so brilliant, and also Viz is filthy, and that's good. Smut and filth is important because laughing at sexuality is very, very important, because when you take sexuality too seriously, it can become quite dangerous because it turns into a religion. And then you have situations where, okay, people talk about how beautiful, the Kama Sutra is, and how in India you see these temples where they show people and all these, because they made sex incredibly sacred. Well, they actually went a bit too far, because if you look at a lot of those illustrations, the women are just basically, fleshlights, Hindu Vedic fleshlights, and the men are the ones having all the fun. So that's even when they were talking about, it's like the hippies in the 60s, free love. Well, it's free love for the smelly guys with beards. The women were still just chicks who were, I was going to ball, that kind of thing. So it's very important to make fun of human sexuality, and because it is kind of funny when you look at it beyond like making love. It is kind of funny when you think about the 70s. What's your sign? I can relate to that. That kind of like singles bar. It's very, very funny. And satire gives us this ability to stop. The great thing about satire is it stops you from crawling up your own arsehole. That's its greatest. It's the greatest fail-safe mechanism for stopping you, or stopping a society, or stopping a culture from crawling up its own arsehole. That's its greatest power. Because the day that you can't laugh at yourself is the day that you have become a danger to your fellow human beings. Because the day you can't laugh at yourself is the day that you think that you're much better than everyone else. And then you have the right to judge, quantify, and destroy another person because they don't think you're as wonderful as you are. I'm not proud of being Irish, but there's one thing I love about Ireland, or being Irish, is that we know how to take the piss out of ourselves. We are not afraid of laughing at ourselves because that's okay. I mean, I used to watch the English comic Bernard Manning telling his Irish jokes, and I would fall around laughing, not only because they were incredibly funny and he was the world's greatest one-liner comic, but because there was no hatred in what he was saying. He wasn't promoting a hatred of Irish people. And secondly, it was like, you do sort of say to yourself, yeah, it's okay. You go to like a Jeff Foxworthy, okay, you don't think that's the entire sum total of your race, but you do at the same time say to yourself, we are a little bit like that. That's okay, and that's all right. You look at Father Ted, that's like a show, the last great sitcom is the Irish had just taken the piss out of themselves, and it's great, and it's healthy. You look at Monty Python, what's that? The English and the goons, that's the English taking the piss out of themselves. I mean, I saw something really funny recently, and it was like graffiti that said something like, don't forget to call your mum. And they said, this is Canadian graffiti. And that was the Canadians laughing at themselves because, we're too nice. But when you can't laugh at yourself anymore, then you're in real trouble because everyone else around you is in real trouble. And we're going to take one song before I close the show up, and it's The Damned and Psychomania. And that was The Damned with Psychomania. And to make up for the lost time at the beginning of the show, run over a little extra tonight, a little bit later. And I want to... Do you remember a couple of weeks ago I spoke about the Charfield Railway disaster? About a train crash in Britain back in the 1920s, where two children had got on the train and no one knew who they were, and the two bodies were basically destroyed when the train carriages went on fire. And the conspiracy had always been that the two children were the bastard offspring of the gentry, and back in those days they would go to those kinds of level of killing kids in order to hide a family, shall we say, indiscretion. Chorley Smedlington's, great-grandfather would have done things like that before he became his grandfather was, or his other grandfather would be in the Punjab killing coolies. But before he became this self-righteous, silver spoon, sanctimonious socialist today. But anyway, the Charfield Railway disaster, just to prove that you must never nail your colours firmly to any mast, and always be ready for new information when it comes in to change your narrative, as our Russ will say tomorrow. Change your narrative, your paradigm, your narrative. I came across a kind of an update to the mystery by a man called Trevor Hart, who put in his own 2 cents into the Charfield Railway disaster mystery regarding the 2 children that nobody knew who they were. And he writes, according to J.A.B. Hamilton in Disaster Down the Line, which came out in paperback in 1987, the year before the article was first published on the tragedy and the mystery of the ghost children. By ghost children, he means children that nobody knew who their identity was. The 2 children could have been wrongly identified adults. This is plausible theory, as I know that adult bodies can be shrunk to the size of small children in an intense fire. This happened during the RAF firebombing raids during the Second World War. That would be the Winston Churchill's mass genocide in places like Dresden. And I was fascinated to discover recently that Britain's worst rail disaster of all time, the Quinton-Schill rail disaster near Gretna Green in 1915, produced a similar mystery to Charfield. The disaster involved similar condition, 3 trains all colliding and being set on fire by escaping gas. In all, 230 people died. Christ, that's incredible. That's a horrific. The authors of the latest book on that disaster, The Quinton-Schill Conspiracy, Jack Richards and Adrian Searle, have concluded that the 4 ghost children in this case were probably a family of 4 from Ireland, a grandmother, a mother and 2 small children. So the Charfield children could have been wrongly identified adults. But there is one problem with Hamilton's theory. Although he claims that the 2 people known to have been on board the train at Charfield were never accounted for, and even gives the death toll of 16 instead of 15, he doesn't name them. So who are they? Previous sources only allege that there was 1 person on the train who wasn't found later. That was the guy I talked about who's walked away from the scene. Hamilton does not name the 2 children who were on the train. Oh, sorry, he does name them as 13-year-old Moira Wade and 11-year-old brother Robert, who he believes were the children seen by porter Henry Haynes of Gloucester. Though I do not believe this. This is Trevor Hart saying he does not believe this. Both children survived, although Moira was badly hurt, but they were not travelling alone, but with their mother, and they must have been in a different part of the train further back. The school motto found on a badly burned uniform was identified from the Truro High School for Girls. According to a Hamilton, this school uniform, part of the blazer and the shirt collar, also had a name tag bearing the name GSS Saunders. So this is the only clue we have as to who the children, if they were children, might have been. Chief Constable James Watson, would have ordered this retained for possible identification, hence the report that only cremated ashes and the remains of footwear were buried. And Hamilton goes on to say that the 2 missing passengers were both men and that no trace was found of their bodies or their belongings. So this would seem to rule out that a link with the remains of the school uniform, even if we assume that they were both being carried in hand luggage and were not necessarily being carried by the children themselves. As for the cause of the crash, the Board of Trade inspector put the blame firmly on the engine crew, which I spoke there about 2 weeks ago, although other railwaymen told the inquest that the worst of the visibility was out of sight of the signal box along with the signals. Hamilton, you see, the train driver had said that he couldn't see the signal. Hamilton, that's what caused the train crash. Hamilton, they said the signal was set at green when it should have been set at danger. And that's where the conspiracy theory comes from, that it was the train was deliberately sabotaged at the signal in order to kill these 2 children so it wouldn't bring any kind of hereditary embarrassment to the aristocrats. Hamilton assured that the driver, Henry Aldington, dozed off and missed the signals, but there's no evidence of the criminal level of incompetence anyway. Burton, the signalman, told the inquest that he tried to get the mail, that means the train, rerouted after the delay, but that the controller at Fishponds refused. Sir James Curtis Bennett, who defended Adlington, tried hard to prove that the signal had been pulled off by a saboteur, but no one believed him. It is therefore very odd that neither Adlington nor Frank Want, the fireman, changed their stories. No saboteur could have known that the unscheduled signal was going to be showing red, and that if they wanted to wreck the train, they could have more easily sabotaged the track. So you have to assume, before I get to that, yeah, they could have sabotaged the track, but it's much easier to change a signal back in those days before centralized traffic control and computer-controlled signals. It was much easier back then to actually get either it was a primitive electric signal to actually get down there and change the relay by shortening the wiring out at the base of the signal. Because remember, the junction boxes and the wiring ran along the outside of the rail line, so you could literally be hidden in the bushes, tamper with the wiring and change the signal, than it would be to physically go on the track with some heavy tools and pickaxes and remove a section of rail. If you wanted to sabotage the train, it was much, much easier to do it hidden by tampering with the electrics in the boxes at the side of the track than going on the track with heavy picks where passing trains would be more likely to see you, where it would be more difficult to get out of the way, where passers-bys would actually see you. There was a case here in Ireland in the 70s I was reading about a poor guy. The UVF, the Ulster Volunteer Force, were trying to derail a train outside Dublin during the time of the Troubles. They removed the section. They're planting a bomb, on the line. This was in Kildare, and some poor bastard was walking his dog and stumbled upon them planting the bomb, and they stabbed him to death. Because that's what would happen if you were going to sabotage a rail line. It's better to tamper with the electrics or the primitive lighting system or signaling system than it is standing on the line in full visibility with heavy tools. You can do it with a pliers. Burton, the signalman, told the inquest that he tried to get the mail rerouted after the delay, and that the controller at Fishponds refused. So there was an attempt to try and get the train rerouted, but it didn't. Okay. No saboteur could have known that the unscheduled signal was going to be showing red, and that if they wanted to wreck the train, they could have done so by sabotaging the track, as I said. So they assumed that it was meant to be a kidnapping turned into a mass killing. So this was the new conspiracy. It's still a conspiracy theory, but just the paradigm changes. Instead of the kids being killed to hide this discretion, the new theory came in that they had set the signal to red to try and get the train to stop, and then kidnapped the kids. But went wrong. The train went through the red signal and ploughed into the back of a standing goods train, killing all the people. Well, lots of the people. If only I knew how the signal repeater worked. What was it, a switch or a circuit breaker? Could it have been pulled off by the wreckage of the wire, as Hamilton, it was so certain it was? That was the other theory, that the signal was changed to red because the train smashed up the wiring. But I don't know how plausible that is, because the wiring is either in a junction box or it's buried under the ground. Was Henry Haynes telling the truth, or was he one of those awkward witnesses who tell people, and this is very important in the case of what's happened today in Paris, what they want to hear, and whose recollections are too good to be true? Who was GSS Saunders anyway? The quest continues. So this is how this story, this addendum to the Charfield Railway story conspiracy, which I talked about 2 weeks ago, serves to illustrate why, when something like what happened in Paris happened, you cannot instantly jump on it and say it was a conspiracy and this is what happened. Because this story happened back in the 1920s. And even after an inquest, even all these years later, the variables change, the facts shift, and as the guy said, if you are conspiratorially inclined, you will change the facts to suit your story. I don't care how much you think you're awake or a good researcher you are, you will change it. And one aspect, remember, we saw a copper being shot on the ground, but we didn't see the people being machine gunned inside the office. So it's very easy to isolate it into one singular incident. And it's only a matter of time for what happens in Paris that people will say, oh, terrorists, no terrorists, copper, no coppers, like they did with the airplanes in the World Trade Center, planes, no planes. See, what happens is, when they throw this into wild confusion and they create these shifts and these splits, the psychopaths who did it or the psychopaths in charge love it. My feeling about 9/11 was it was a combination of compliance with inside the Bush administration. I'm not going to say the United States government, but inside they were a specific type of monster, and Islamic fanatics. I think those two things working together, and I think that the Bush government politicians were too busy raping the country that they allowed that to happen. And I think the same thing will probably happen with this. This is what happens in a lot of these things. It's never like the movie where there's one absolute bad guy and one absolute good guy. There's usually a kind of a mixture of both. But you never get to the truth, and we'll never get truth to what happened in Paris today. And I hope people remember that. I hope you think about that. Because while some guy is looking at the video 100 times, saying, come on, this is a joke, bullet didn't enter him, there could just as easily be a mother or a wife or a daughter or a sister in Paris mourning their dead son. And that's why it's probably best to keep the foot off the pedal and not hit the brakes too soon into anything like this. Because I said at the beginning, yes, false flags are real. Yes, the mass media is full of crap. Yes, our governments are full of psychopaths. At the same time too, Islamic terrorism attacks do happen. And Islamic fanaticism is real. And all we can do is go with the facts as they're presented to us. And we don't even know if they're facts. But my attitude is always take the fail-safe position and show compassion for the victims. And in this case, the victims are 12 people who are just trying to maintain freedom of speech. And if they were not killed, freedom of speech was killed. And when that's killed, we've all been stabbed in the heart. Thank you very much. This is the Velocity of Now, Thomas Sheridan. Look after yourselves. Take care of yourselves. And tonight, more than any other night since I've been doing these broadcasts, feck 'em if they can't take a joke.